Welcome to the Fast Break Podcast. We're your hosts for the Hoosier Network for the final time. It is Ari Betterly, Ryan Costello, and Sam Elster, all seniors, all graduating, but we're here to break things down for you one last time, guys. Wow. So,
Gone by quick.
It's crazy.
yeah, it's crazy to think we started this podcast about 12, 13 weeks ago, maybe 14.
Technically, the Fast Break podcast season 1 was last year.
Yeah.
But this year we've been so much more consistent and consistently bringing everyone news, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's
It has
been so much
been.
fun. Well, there's so much to talk about today, guys. I wish I could only talk to you guys about the tournament games, but there's far more on the table. So, something I think that we immediately need to approach as we go into this episode is the transfer portal. So, if you're watching this podcast, you're probably aware Indiana didn't make it past the second round of the tournament. They played Utah, played University of South Carolina, and their season has ended. But the day or two after, we are already seeing 3 players on the IU roster enter the transfer portal. So let's break that down. We have Lilly Meister, Jules LaMendola, or Juliana LaMendola, and Lexus Bargesser all announced their transfer portal. I don't know if you like a bid.
Yeah.
Just throw their
Putting
hat
their
in.
name in there,
entered.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's first start with the first person that put their name in, who was Juliana LaMendola. Sam, why don't I throw it to you?
Yeah, this one kind of came as, I guess, a little bit of a surprise. She has been, what seemed like kind of dealing with an injury. She was wearing a boot sometimes, but Teri Moren announced after the Utah game that she was out for the rest of the season. So, not sure what that was all about. But, I mean, she got a decent amount of playing time when Sydney Parrish went down. She was starting player. You know, she was known for her aggressive defense, drawing a lot of charges, but she's came into this IU program like we were talking before, big player out of Texas.
Big
So,
recruit,
yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where she ends up. But no matter where she goes, this program's going to be getting a very good player that IU is going to be missing for coming off the bench.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement. I think, like you said, when Sydney Parrish was injured, I think twice in like a time
Couple
period.
times, yeah.
Yeah, she was always that first person that stepped into that guard play
Mhm.
and really made an impact for Indiana. I mean, during the Bahamas series, especially.
In that North Carolina game,
Yes.
she had like 8 or 9 rebounds. It was impressive.
The broadcasters kept complimenting her and being like, wow, Juliana LaMendola is really holding this team together right now, which that was early on in the season, but still goes to show she has a lot of potential. So, interesting thoughts. Anything else to add, Ryan?
I feel like you guys hit it on her. It was interesting how she went in, and then within, I think it was like 3 or 4 hours,
Yeah.
the other 2 players, Lexus Bargesser and Lilly Meister, both went in. So it was a lot for IU fans to deal with on Twitter. I saw so many fans just surprised because these were players that you would think, with 3 starters moving on and graduating, these are 3 players that you could see like fitting in the starting lineup. So
why don't we move to Lexus Bargesser?
Bargesser, yeah, I think.
Bargesser, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel like she's under like Chloe Moore McNeil in the way that she's becoming, or she has been a great defender, but I feel like this next year she would have been what Chloe Moore McNeil is on defense and guarding the
Right.
team's best players, because we've seen her do it when Chloe's on the bench, when she comes in. And offensively, we've seen her game grow a little bit more this year. I feel like she's making a couple more 3-pointers. Her free throw percentages went up, and I feel like we really saw her take a step forward. So this one's a little bit confusing, but as someone who's been on the bench the last 3 years, maybe she wants to go a place where she knows for sure she'll be able to start.
I think that's a good point because, I mean, the past 2 years, Ryan and I covering this team, we've seen her grow a lot. I mean, last year she was shooting her free throws like this and people were commenting on it. And then she came back the next season and had completely changed her shot. So she's a player that's constantly growing. And as you said, she's guarded some of the top players in the nation along with Chloe Moore McNeil. And every press conference, Teri Moren has mentioned over and over again how she needs Chloe and Lexi on defense, no matter the game. And she's been also the notorious 6-man off the bench after she's been healed from her injuries. So I don't know if there was a conversation, we kind of talked about this with the coaching staff, if like you're not getting a starting position, or what would have, kind of put in her head, no, I don't want to be here anymore, because it seemed like she was treading towards a starting position next year. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I think this one honestly came as the most surprising out of the three because she was like, as you guys were saying, kind of getting molded into like the Chloe Moore McNeil position. And I thought it was interesting. Like before the season started, Teri Moren did mention how she was working on that new jump shot, and she was kind of going in and out of it this whole entire season. But I've seen major improvement. I mean, I know you guys have really in-depthly covered the team, but I mean, just from this season alone, I think she's improved significantly. And as such an elite defender, I thought it was no question that she would be in the starting lineup next year, and that she was always one of the first people off the bench after Lilly, obviously. But I think that she played such a big role on this team that it is kind of surprising.
And last year, when Sydney Parrish got hurt, she was in the starting lineup
Yeah.
for multiple games, kind of like Juliana LaMendola was this year. So it's surprising with that like history of being like a starter, like stepped up, that she wouldn't think that she would be in that position this year. But the nice thing about the transfer portal is that you can still decide to go back to the same squad if you want to. But we'll have to see in the next couple days,
Yeah.
weeks.
And moving on, we have one other who shortly announced this after Lexus. It was Lilly Meister. And I wouldn't say this one came as much of a shock as maybe Lexus, but after the tournament play, I am a little shocked that she, didn't give it more time, at least maybe to discuss. I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but it seemed like the beginning and the middle of the season was a tough time for Lilly Meister. We saw that, we've covered that, we've mentioned that over and over again. Even her teammates were saying, we're always instilling confidence into Lilly. We're always pouring into her, like Chloe Moore McNeil said. But during the Big Ten, the Big Ten tournament, and then the tournament itself, it seemed like she was stepping up, looking a little more confident in herself and playing a lot better. But I don't know what your guys' thoughts were. I didn't necessarily see it happening, but I'm also not surprised.
Yeah.
Not-
Yeah,
you
you
go.
Okay, so what I was I was just thinking about this actually, that, maybe Lily kind of took into account the Faith Wiseman factor. That, the middle of the season was really hard for Lily. I think that she was struggling a lot with her confidence. We talked about it a lot, how she just needed to break out of her shell. Kind of when she got out of the starting lineup, I feel like her confidence just lowered a lot. And I think that honestly, going into the transfer portal is the best thing that she could do to really try and find a program that she can see herself thriving in. And I just don't think that she saw that here.
Yeah, when she was a full-time starter, she got 8 games of double-digit points, and she scored 20 points 3 different times. So she might feel like you said that if she goes somewhere else, she'll be able to replicate that, and maybe she'll be able to gain the confidence she wasn't able to gain here at Indiana.
I think that Caroline Lilly switch up would be definitely difficult, being in Lily's shoes. Like
Getting
being the
benched.
predecessor necessarily
Yeah.
that was seen to be the next Mackenzie Holmes, and then some other, kind of star walks in and she kind of
Yeah.
swoops you under your feet, and now you're on the bench and you're coming in as like the 6th, 7th man, and I'm sure that could definitely decrease some self-esteem and confidence if you're already struggling with that. So I agree. I think
Yeah.
whatever happens to Lily, it's for the best, and I think she could definitely thrive somewhere else and
Yeah.
just regain confidence, a new start, a fresh
Mhm.
start.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw both of them in both Lily and Lexus stay in the Big Ten, because Lexus is from Michigan and Lily's from Minnesota. So maybe one of like the Michigan schools look at Lexus, and what Minnesota looks at Lily, and she stays in the conference, and IU sees her next year if she doesn't decide to come back.
That would be very interesting.
That would
Yeah.
be very interesting. But, I feel like the whole narrative this past season of Lily, being the next Mackenzie Holmes, that's not an easy thing to be put up
A
against.
lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure, and I think that's a very big thing to put on an athlete. And she was now going to be a senior, and was finally getting those starting positions as a junior, and didn't even see that much time when she was taken out of the starting position. So it's got to be frustrating.
Yeah. I agree. Like you said, Sam, so much pressure to be a legend at IU
Yes.
and follow that legacy. I can't imagine the gauntlet
No.
of stress and anxiety I would
Yeah.
feel knowing that I had to live up to somebody who just broke an all-time record.
This is the
Quite
all-time
Exactly.
scorer
Yeah.
leader in the program. That would be
Yeah.
hard.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
But with that being said, wish these players all the best. We'll see what happens because beyond these 3 spots, now they're missing Sydney Parrish and Chloe Moore McNeil and Caroline Striplin as well. That's 6 players.
They're replacing.
Yeah. So
They do have 2 new recruits
That's true.
Yes.
that are highly touted. Sam, do you want to
Yeah.
talk about them?
Well, there's Navia Caffey, who's, a guard, so hopefully can be making in the role of Lexus Bargesser, kind of working with Shea Chesky. These are 2 big recruits. Then she's the number 2 recruit in Missouri and number 61 in the country. And then the other one is Maya Mikhailowski, who was actually named Indiana Miss Basketball. There was
Yes.
a nice little tribute video with Sydney Parrish included in it. But she's also a forward, so I feel like this is kind of be like the same expectation with Faith Wiseman. Also number 1 recruit in Indiana and the number 61 recruit in the country. But number 47 recruit in the country. But she also has an older sister who is in the transfer portal from
Butler.
yes,
yeah.
which could be very big for Indiana, getting a sister duo who can, fill those forward positions that they're going to be missing with Lilly and Caroline leaving. So it's not like they have nothing going for them next season so far because they got 2 big recruits coming in and, also freshman class, including Faith and, still Yarden and Shea coming back as of right now.
As
right now.
As we record this podcast,
Yes,
things could change by the time
yes.
we publish it.
But, they've still got a lot of work to do in recruiting.
Yeah, and I also think there's a lot of players we didn't see as well. I mean, that freshman class, one was injured indefinitely.
Sydney Fenn.
Yes, Sydney
Yeah.
Fenn. We have no idea how she plays basketball
Yeah.
At the college level,
at the
yeah.
college level, and she was a recruit coming in along with Faith Wiseman, who actually, stepped in during the Big Ten tournament and had a little moment to shine.
Yeah.
Although it wasn't very large, she still came in and got some minutes. So there's hope there and there's confidence instilled there. So
Mhm.
I'm definitely interested to see how this goes, but I do think Indiana needs to be aggressive in the portal. I think there's been some times, I don't know what, they have a certain brand of what Indiana basketball looks like. And Teri Moren says we recruit these certain kind of kids. And that's very important to their program and important to the Indiana culture, I believe. But I also think that they've lost out on a lot of these, top recruits that you see at the big top schools because they focus on maybe some of the more Indiana players or more like Build-A-Bear type people where they're not necessarily at their best yet, but she wants to work them up like a Chloe Moore McNeil. And I don't think that's going to happen every single time. And right now, you can't make a bunch of different people to be the best. You need some girls
You need
who
some
are
quick fixes that are experienced.
Yes.
And I feel like if they don't do this, they're gonna lag behind the other top teams in the country because you kind of in this day and age in college athletics you need to adapt or you kind of could die. Like the program could not continue to see the success it has over the last 10 years. So I think if they're able to aggressively use the portal, they could see some good success next year.
Yeah, completely agreed. I don't think you can play that game with today's transfer portal. I mean, now we're seeing 3 players that, were recruited highly by Teri, and I think that she wanted to work up, and now they're not wanting to see that process. They want to see that now. They want to see their impact now. And I think that it was rare to see how Chloe Moore McNeil stayed those 5 years and developed her game like that. And I think Teri's talked about that before, how she stuck it out and how it's rare to see that in today's age. And I totally agree with that because the transfer portal now is just a whole different brand of basketball. That
Yeah.
recruiting is just at a complete different level.
And it opens up before the season's completely done because
Yes.
it opened up on I think it was Monday or it's Tuesday, and
Yeah.
there's coaches, 16 teams on both the men's and women's side
right.
that have to kind of coach their team in the tournament, but then also some of their
Think about
assistants and them
recruits.
think about recruiting some
Yep.
of the biggest names in the transfer portal.
Yep.
So
It's crazy.
it'll be interesting to see how that all works out for
Yeah.
Indiana and all the other schools around the country.
Yeah,
Totally.
it absolutely will. I'm definitely interested.
Me
I'm at the edge
too.
of my seat to see what happens. It's such an interesting age for basketball, but Or were you going to say something else, Ryan?
I was just gonna say follow along with us to make sure even after this podcast, all the updates
Yeah.
for
Right.
Indiana women's basketball.
Totally.
Because
Get
there
all your news
definitely
with the
could
Hoosier
be
Network.
some. There's
Yeah.
gonna be
Mhm.
there's gonna be some updates that we're definitely gonna keep sharing with you all as the season has officially technically ended.
But now the off-season moves.
Yeah.
the off season moves. And
Yes.
let's move on now. Talk about kind of the season in review. Briefly talk about these two games because obviously the tournament games are important. We have to talk about them. And then we can break into some last hot topic questions. But let's briefly talk about Utah. So, who wants to take this away?
I can
Ryan?
do it. I feel like this was really a game that defined like what Indiana women's basketball has been over the last like 10 years. They shared the sugar nicely, like a Teri Morenism.
Shared
like
the
she likes
sugar.
to say in press conferences. They had 19 assists and 29 made field goals. One of those transfers this past season, who was a starter all season long, Shea Chesky, who really from the last couple weeks of the season just had a great close to her 1st season in Indiana uniform. In her first game in March Madness, had 16 points on 6 of 8 shooting, 2 of 3 from 3. So she was on fire, and then Yarden led the team like she has all season. And this game was kind of just like what Indiana can do when it's working at its best. They had 14 points in fast break in transition, and that's how Teri Moren said all season what makes their offense work the best. And the big third quarter really helped them finish in the fourth, and they were able to finally win a game outside of Assembly Hall because they were down in Columbia, South Carolina.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. I think there's a lot of questions going into this game as could Indiana tackle that on the road experience during the tournament because they've been so fortunate to have these, close, tight-knit games at home.
Last 3 years,
Exactly. And last year they almost got upset on their own home court, but they didn't allow it.
No.
But that just shows the power of March. But this year, like you said, finally after this wave of a season, they put it together enough to make sure they made it past that first round. They said no. And I think you could just see that there was a want on the floor. What team wanted it more? Indiana wanted it more. And you could tell just all the players, like Sydney Parrish especially, they had so much passion on the floor. And you could tell that they were playing like as if it was their last time. And it just goes to show when everyone was playing at their best, that's when Indiana plays their best.
And
Yeah.
Teri Moren got her 10th straight 20-win season. So
Exactly.
there was that. I bet she was happy about getting to that mark.
I bet. But honestly, I feel like she doesn't keep track. She always says she doesn't keep
She
track.
doesn't keep track, but I feel like now that the season's over, she's like, okay, I'm glad I
Yeah.
continued.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then after that game, we had University of South Carolina yet again, back to back, 2 years in a row. Yeah, I think Sam, do you want to talk a little about that, and I can add on to you?
Yeah, I mean, this was a game that they were tough. They put
were
South
leading.
they put South Carolina on their heels, and I don't think South Carolina has been tested like that in the NCAA tournament like that since Indiana played them. And the third quarter was the main reason why they lost. The first half was awesome. Indiana had leads. They showed that they were able to compete with this type of team. It was similar to how they played against USC in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
But the third quarter was not great. South Carolina came out and outscored the Hoosiers 26-14, and they shot 11 of 16 from the field. And in the first half, they were holding South Carolina to a very low percentage. I forget what the number was,
It was
but
like in the 30s.
Yeah,
it
it
was,
was like
they
30s.
were playing some stellar defense, and they were also using the fast break to their advantage. But it was then hard for Indiana to win in that environment in South Carolina, and it was a hard final quarter because they just could not cut on the lead. They were making the shots, but then when it came down to stopping South Carolina on the defensive end, they just couldn't do it. But I think that it was a very well fought game. I don't think that it was a bad game to end the season on. This is one of the best teams in the country, one of the national title contenders.
Probably will be in the Final Four.
Yeah, likely will. And, they took this team down to the wire. And, Don Stanley said afterwards that Indiana always tests us. And I think that, Lindsey Gottlieb and JuJu Watkins said the same thing in the Big Ten tournament. I think that those type of comments that, high profile coaches and players say about an Indiana program, I think that that's extremely impressive to have on your resume. So
Yeah.
while it wasn't a win, Shea ended with 9 consecutive double-digit scoring games, which is pretty impressive as a player who is now in her first NCAA tournament and a bright future for Indiana.
Yeah.
Especially with, I feel like we talked about it at times and how we saw it, where she was kind of in and out of scoring double digits and wouldn't be there for some games. But like at the end of the season, she really showed up and she really
She did.
showed
Yeah.
what she was, like her potential, what she was full of.
Totally.
Yeah. And like you said, I think the word that encompassed this game was just toughness and
Mhm.
showing that, this team is tough and how close they are to being an elite team in the nation. I mean, they've put so many teams to a tough battle this year. We've seen it over and over again. So close to getting over the hump. You have UCLA, so close. USC, twice, so close. You have SC, so close. 2 years in a row, back to back, in the tournament. And the same coach telling the broadcast team, this team literally makes us sweat.
Mm-hmm.
And just couldn't do it. And I hope for Teri Moren that next year, a couple years down the line, that she's able to finally say, we've gotten over that hump. We've defeated these teams. I mean, and they have defeated some tough teams in the past, but those top teams, those bread and butter teams in the tournament, because man, oh man, was that a good first half? But that second half, you saw the power of Dawn Stanley, and you saw the power of her team
I
just
just
kind
wanna-
of shine through.
I want to know what she said in that locker room because they came out and it looked like Indiana wasn't even on the floor because they were just making buckets like crazy and their hustle was just so there. But that's why she is probably going to be maybe the best coach when she's all said and done. When she hangs it up, she'll be up there with the top coaches. So
She could be.
there's a reason they've won. They went undefeated last year and won the national championship.
Yeah, that's true.
100%. And yeah, I don't think that that's a bad loss to have for Indiana because, I mean, it's Dawn Stanley and it's South Carolina. And I wish them the best in the tournament. But now moving forward, are we ready, Ryan?
Yes,
Oh,
let's
yes.
do hot topics. Today, we're going to do a little split. We're going to first do a hot topic section about Indiana's offseason. We kind of previewed that a little bit at the beginning of the podcast, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper. And then the second part of the hot topic, we're going to talk about March Madness because how can we not? There was
Of course.
some
So
good
much
games
to talk about.
from the first weekend of the tournament. But first with Indiana, what would you guys say is one word to describe this Hoosiers season? It's been so up and down, but what would you guys say? Sam,
Yeah,
I'll
I'll
go to
go
you first.
The first thing that came to my mind was unpredictable because, I feel like we tried to predict so much of it, which games they would win, which games they would lose. And, I feel like in the beginning of the season, we had this, mindset that, this team was seeming so well together, that they were meshing so well. And then, they kind of came out and it didn't seem like that. And then, they were winning games and then they were losing some pretty questionable games. And then, they beat Stanford, they beat Baylor, and then they lose to North Carolina and the Bahamas. I think that this whole season has just been very unpredictable and kind of a roller coaster, just seeing what would happen next.
Ari.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I don't know. I'm just going to use a synonym word because it's basically the same, but truly just fluctuating. There were so many fluctuations. For me, that really started during that Butler game. It was just unquestionable. It was questionable of what this team would be. Was the chemistry there? Was this team playing as a team? And, I mean, there's people in the transfer portal now, so maybe there was some discretion behind the scenes we don't know about. Hopefully not. But it was just up and down over and over again. There was teams that they beat that were super established, like Ohio State, and then there was teams you would never imagine they would lose to, like a Butler. So,
yeah, I think that really kind of hits the point of Teri Moren mentioned it multiple times. So there was peaks and valleys to the season, and that's perfectly describing what she said. I'm gonna go with another synonym. I'm gonna say shaky, just because I feel like the last couple years with Indiana women's basketball, they would drop a game, but they would be able to rebound. And sometimes this season, like when we saw the team go on a losing streak in Big Ten play, they weren't able to shake off the stuff that we've seen them do in the past. So I would go with shaky. But moving on from that, every season comes to an end, and now Indiana is in their off season since they lost in the second round. So off season needs. We've seen how three players are already into the portal. What would you guys say are Indiana's biggest offseason needs? Ari, I'll go with you first.
Yeah. Ryan, you mentioned a good point coming up, but I'll let you say that. But I said they need to fill a Chloe Moore McNeil and a Sydney Parrish void now. And how do you do that? It's like Mackenzie Holmes. I mean, it's not to the extent of, legendary status, but as we've mentioned, these are your glue players. These are the players Teri Moren's hugging in the locker room that she's talking about on the podium every single week. They are the DNA of Indiana basketball, the face of this campus,
The captains.
the captains of this team. And now they're both gone together in a single season. And especially the impact I think Sydney's had on Indiana, being from Indiana, it's just going to be very big shoes to fill. I think the potential, Indiana basketball recruit coming in next year could fill that maybe Sydney Parrish, Indiana void. I mean, there's other Indiana players, but just looking for someone to be a face, someone that's strong and also consistent enough to be a leader.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, my thing is just recruiting in general. You got to hit the transfer portal hard and
Yeah.
fill in for the depth that they lost. I think that a big reason why they lost that South Carolina game and a lot of games this season is just the lack of depth. And, we were seeing a 7-player rotation, which honestly isn't going to fly in today's college basketball.
No.
And these teams, they have like 4-man depth that, come off the bench and give a spark and give the starters some rest. I mean, Chloe Moore McNeil and Sydney Parrish, they were playing overtime minutes. And, Lilly Meister and Caroline Striplin were swapping roles just on and off, like 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And that's tiring when it comes to a season as long as college basketball. And when you come to March Madness and you're playing games that are just one-day breaks. And so I just think recruiting in general, hit the transfer portal hard, keep on hitting high school recruits, but I honestly think you got 2 freshmen coming in, hit the transfer portal, make that more of your priority. You need to find players that have the experience that, I guess you can build that were maybe coming from smaller schools that now are going to be coming into a Big Ten program and an Indiana program. So my thing is just recruiting.
I really agree with you on the depth thing. I think that's part of a way Teri Moren leads a program is she has her starters play high minutes. But like you said, in this day and age, I don't think that that's the best thing to be most successful in the long run and could be part of the reason why we see 3 players entering the transfer portal after this season. So I think if she's able...
Because those were the players that would come
Yeah,
off the bench.
that was her depth. And I think if you put more resources into that and filling that depth, then you're going to see more success in the whole. But one need I think that they really need to put on and they need to get in the transfer portal is someone that is an experienced center, because we saw multiple times this season, whether it was South Carolina, USC, UCLA, them just get beat up in the paint and not get those rebounds. And that's just having someone to throw it to in the inside takes off pressure from Yarden Garzone as the leading scorer. And then it makes them have to guard everybody and not be able to double team Yarden and make the offense more predictable. So I think if they have someone like that, they'll see more success on the offensive end next year.
Yeah, and building off what you said, a lot of times there'd be points lacking from the paint in comparison to what the guards were doing. Even in the tournament, it was...
And that'd be the difference in the game.
That would be the only difference in the statistics. It was like, okay, our center in the middle here only has 10 points, while Yarden and Shea both have almost 15, 16 points. But then you go to
the other team.
USC's, and you got someone in the paint who's scoring well. Then you got, obviously, 2 powerhouses outside that can do anything. You got Kiki and, JuJu. You can't stop that. It's a recipe for success. And I think moving forward, Indiana needs to build a full recipe, not just the good proteins, not just some fiber. You need some carbs. You need some energy coming from other places on this food pyramid, okay?
Totally.
Yes,
I don't know where the food pyramid came
love
from,
that.
but
I love the food pyramid.
but they need to do that. But yes.
Because for every perfect recipe, you need to have all the ingredients, and they didn't have all the
Exactly.
ingredients
So
this year, which
true.
is part of the reason they were so up and down. But moving to next season, what would you guys say is your outlook on next season, Sam?
I think it's going to be pretty similar. I think it really depends on how they do hit the transfer portal and everything. But, you know, I'm just going to speak on how, how the men's team kind of went. I think Teri Moren might be on the hot seat. I hate to say it, I do. But, I think that fans, take this stuff very, deep if they don't see success. And, I think that it'll be very telling to see what will happen.
You think she's in
The
the hot
hot seat.
seat?
That's
I think if
after,
she
even after 10 straight 21 seasons, 6
Yes,
straight tournament
because
appearances,
I think that
hosting the last 3
Indiana.
years.
I think that Indiana basketball is has a very high reputation, and the recent success with the women's team. I think that if fans don't see the success come again, and that they don't make it past the second round or make it to the Sweet 16, that fans aren't going to be very happy.
Mm.
I hate to say it. I just
Maybe
think
we'll
it's-
get some people in our comments from.
I mean, I
that statement, more views.
Yeah.
I just hate to say it, but I think it's just the impact of social media and what fans think.
Yeah.
And,
That's fair.
with today's day and age of the transfer portal, the Big Ten is a gauntlet. It's hard, and it's hard to be one of those best teams. But, Indiana has had that reputation.
I don't know if I would say hot, but maybe it will get a little lukewarm.
It will get lukewarm.
Yeah.
I think next season would have, even if it went bad, I don't think I think maybe the following season it would be.
I think this next
the
season.
burner would be turned up all the way.
Yeah.
I think this next season is gonna be very telling. It's gonna be like
Very
It's going to be a
telling.
rebuild. They know it is.
right, exactly. Like, well, this year you could say it was a rebuild,
But you had
but you had
3 experienced starters.
players.
So,
I mean, you could compare this, which very different scenarios, to Mackenzie Holmes being the Trace Jackson
Yes.
Davis, who's now going into the WNBA, held this team together, 25 plus points every game. Honestly, one of the best players in the league at the time, and now they're gone.
Yep.
And it's kind of the same thing where it's like all the pressure's on everybody else, and the team didn't perform to the success they were at
Mhm.
before. Now it's the season after that. Are they going to falter like the men's team
Yeah.
and get worse,
Yeah.
or are they going to get better?
Yeah.
Because when the men got all these players from the transfer portal, none of them played together well, and they played even maybe worse than last year somehow.
the one
Yes.
thing I will say on that is I think Indiana is the Indiana women's program. Teri Moren, no offense, Mike Woodson, I think is a much better coach.
Oh,
and is able to
100%.
put-
1,000%. And by the way, I'm not saying that I think she should be on the hot seat. I'm just saying what I think that
No,
fans will think.
I agree.
I think she's a great coach.
I just think if she's able to get people in the portal, I don't think she'll mess it up like Mike Woodson did. No offense, Mike,
agree.
if you're watching the Hot Fast Break podcast.
Sorry, Mike. No slander, but slander.
I think. Are you guys ready to move on to the?
Let's do
Yeah.
it.
Let's move on to March Madness. Let's get a little bit more. I don't know. I love March Madness. Is so fun. A little
It's
bit
so
more
fun.
joy.
so much
Yeah.
fun.
But the first thing is not very joyful. Unfortunately, in USC's game against Mississippi State, we saw arguably the National Player of the Year, JuJu Watkins, get injured. So, do you think this really hurts USC's chances of going far, going to a Final Four, and even potentially being a national championship contender? What do you guys think?
I mean, you got to tip your cap to Kiki Irvin. She played her booty off after JuJu left the floor, and their coach said it beautifully. Like, this team really rallied together, to be there because they know that they were missing JuJu, but they still rallied together and got that win even after she had to be carried off the floor.
Yeah.
I think Kiki might have had 36 points. So it just goes to show
Yeah.
that there's multiple stars on this team, and this team can also have more stars than maybe what we've noticed because everyone's got their, their blinders straight on JuJu. That maybe this will open up an opportunity for some other players to really step up and show that this isn't just a JuJu Kiki team, that there's multiple players on this lineup that can push them to, the Final Four and maybe the national championship. But
Yeah.
do I think that they're going to be a national championship title team after this? I do not,
Yeah.
sadly enough. But all my prayers and condolences to JuJu and her family. That's absolutely horrible. And no player deserves to be going through that, especially when they're in this, tenure of their career.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I think they will be able to probably win their next game, but I don't see them beating a team like UConn that's playing together, has some health is healthy. You have AZ Fudd. You have Paige Becker, Sarah Strong. They just seem, because it's Paige's last season, she's made it official. I see them being able to make that game and winning it for her. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, it changes a lot. I don't think that they will be, as much of like a national contender type of team anymore. I don't think they'll make the Final Four, but I do also agree. I think that they'll win the next game. But I think this means a lot for the depth. I think it means a lot for this whole team and the whole mindset of the team. Kiki did step up and everything, but I just don't think that this is going to be the same USC team. But, it was terrible to see. As soon as I got that notification yesterday morning, it was really upsetting to see this.
It was the first thing I woke up to on Instagram.
Yeah.
I opened my phone and I see her face and I was like,
That's a little bit
What?
depressing.
It's upsetting.
Way to start your day, yeah.
It's
Moving
hard
on
see.
to a more joyful topic. Which team do you think has impressed you the most through the first 2 rounds? Sam, do you want to
Yeah.
go?
I watched that Maryland-Alabama game.
that was such
That
a
was
good
crazy.
game.
2 days ago, and
The Alabama
was that 2
player had-
games
yeah.
ago? Yeah, it was. Yeah, the Alabama
45 points.
Yeah.
You got to tip
So,
your hat also
she was
to
amazing.
Alabama. Yeah.
Listen, I mean, that was a high-scoring game for some women's college basketball, and I think Maryland just really. I was really impressed by them. They were fighting. They were gritty. They were not backing down. And a double over, that's a lot of time running up and down the court, and they did not really seem that gassed. And I just think it was really impressive, and it shows that this team just wants to win. They did not back down, and I think that they've been the team that I've been most impressed with, because I've watched a lot of these games. A lot of them have been close, but a lot of them have also been blowouts. But I think this has been the game that I've kind of been the most impressed by a team.
I'm really excited to see the Sweet 16 of Maryland versus South Carolina.
Me too.
That
This
coaching,
women's tournament's about to get so
Yeah.
exciting.
that coaching battle between Brenda Fries and Dawn Staley, and then Cheyenne Sellers versus Chloe Kitts, Tessa Johnson. It's gonna be.
It's
gonna be.
It's going to
Get
be
the
just.
popcorn out.
It's going to be like last year.
Yeah.
I'm so
Exactly.
excited.
No, I think that Maryland's going to give South Carolina a run for its money. I think it's going to be similar to the IU game, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ari, what about you?
Moving on to that, I was going to say South Carolina. I mean,
Yeah.
the reigning national championship title holders, and they obviously were, playing against Indiana and were struggling a little bit in that first half.
Yeah.
But then, like I said, they came out of the locker room.
A whole different team,
third
basically.
quarter just
Yeah.
ran off and exploded out of the half, and they never looked back. And I'm excited to see that the rest of the tournament. I think similar with Maryland, another Big Ten team they're going to be facing, potentially,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to do the exact same thing. I think Dawn Stanley has some recipe I've been mentioning. She knows how to get this team from point A to point B, and I think they also have the puzzle pieces to just keep going, and they know how to also play in a tournament, and they know how to win a
Yeah.
tournament. And I don't
That's
think that's
true.
going to change even
Yeah.
with some players that have left that roster.
A Dawn Staley team will never not be coached well because she's
Exactly.
just so amazing. I'm gonna go with Notre Dame. I think Neil Ivey and her squad, they kind of faltered a little bit at the end of the regular season, but they were the #1 team in the country for a time this past season, and I think they getting at #3 seed really pissed them off
Yeah.
because their first 2 games they were in control the entire time. They won both by 20 plus. And I think they're gonna make it all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah.
Dare I say, win the national championship?
Okay.
I think Hannah Hidalgo is such a good ball player. I think Olivia Miles is also. I think they might have the best backcourt
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
in the
In
country.
the country,
Sure.
definitely.
And then they have other players on their squad that have been starters for multiple years. So I think they're going to be a tough out. So this kind of moves us nicely into our last question of the podcast. I'm going to say my Final Four and then give my national champion, which I already kind of gave because I said Notre Dame. But my Final Four is going to be UConn, UCLA, South Carolina, and Notre Dame. And I think it's going to be a nice little rivalry in the national championship, UConn versus Notre Dame. But I think Notre Dame's going to be able to pull it off and beat Paige. What about you, Sam?
I like that. I have the same Final Four, but I actually have UCLA winning, which might be a little bit of like a hot take also, but I just like the way that they play, and I
Yeah.
think that, Lauren Betts is just so good, and I don't think South Carolina is going to be able to do it again. I just don't think that they're the same team without like Camila Cardoso.
Yeah.
But, I would also not hate seeing UConn and Paige Beckers leave UConn with a national championship and leading
And
them
that's
to it.
that's what I was gonna say.
I just don't want them
Yeah.
to win their 12th national championship. They already have 11. I think 11.
11's enough.
Yeah.
But I think that it'll be a very interesting. I usually am wrong with these type of predictions,
You
so
might be right,
who
though.
knows? But I just think that UCLA is a very strong team. What about you, Ari?
Yeah, I wanted to shake things up just a tad. I have the same 3: South Carolina, UCLA, UConn, and I think I put TCU because
Ooh,
I've been watching
Haley.
them. Haley's been playing really well.
She's having a renaissance this year.
She-
Last year,
she is having her renaissance era.
Literally.
And I've been watching this team during the tournament, and I always am thinking there's always one upset. Maybe not this year, the way that March Madness is going, but I'd like to
I like
see
that
them
pick.
make a little run and make it to the Final Four because who doesn't want to see some Haley Van Lith in that Final Four matchup game? But I'm going to say UConn takes it. It's Paige Becker's year. Caitlin Clark, Paige Becker's last year, face off, one of the
Oh my God.
craziest
That
games
final, so good.
I've ever watched. And honestly, if that one call was not made during that,
UConn would have won.
UConn would've
Exactly.
won.
And so I think, respectfully, it's Paige Becker's
Yeah.
time to leave college with a natty, go to
Get
the
the number one
WNBA, go against Caitlin, make
Ugh.
this aura in the WNBA happen. I'm ready. Let's get it going.
I like it. I
Yeah.
like it.
The rest of this postseason is going to be amazing, and the
Yeah.
WNBA play with all of these great.
I'm excited.
Rookies.
There's so
Yeah.
much to
It-
talk about
it's
with
gonna be
women's
so
sports
good.
in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it
So
is
exciting.
notable right now that USC against Kansas State, they're only a 1.5 point favorite
Wow.
to
Wow.
win,
That's
which
how
I
much
feel like if
JuJu-
JuJu, they would have been way more. But I thought that was really noticeable that I just saw.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be fun.
Oh my God, the last
The
one.
last
I know,
one.
the
Thank you
last
so much,
one.
everybody, for tuning in and listening to
Yes.
us all season. We loved talking.
We
hoops.
loved yapping women's
Yes,
sports, you
we
guys.
love it.
And
love
maybe
it.
we can come back a couple more if we're bored and just talk
Yeah.
about
Maybe.
the tournament.
Yeah.
Who cares? We love women's sports
Yeah.
here, and all of us, as we graduate, will be supporting women's sports, watching
Yes.
women's sports, hopefully covering women's sports. So
Hopefully.
keep following us through the Hoosier Network and through our careers at Ryan Costello, at Sam Elster, at Ari Betterly on
Yes.
X.
Yes.
And yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for following us on the Fast Break podcast. Big shout out to Teri Moren and her team. Thank you for
Yes.
allowing us to cover you all. And we won't catch you next time, but
You'll catch the Fast Break podcast next time, but with a different host.
Yeah.
exactly. Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys. Have a good day. Bye.